In my videos about Germany, I don't often talk about the resignation of a politician, but I am going to make an exception in the case of former health minister and now former chairman of the CDU-CSU parliamentary group, Jens Spahn. Quiet, shut up, The story of his political career involves, among other things, face masks, a dubious political organisation and a big house. But what finally brought him down was a baby. But let's begin at the beginning. Jens Georg Spahn was born in 1980 and as an adult worked for a brief period as a bank teller. But in 2002, he was elected a member of the Bundestag for the CDU. In 2015, he was parliamentary state secretary to the finance minister, but in 2018 was appointed to the post of health minister. One small detail that you actually need to know is that he is homosexual and in 2017 married his partner Daniel Funke, who at the time was an office manager for the Burda Media Group. Keep that in mind because it's going to become important. The thing about Spahn is that he's best known for a series of controversies and bizarre decisions, some of which may have cost the nation billions of euros. There is, of course, the usual low-level corruption that today's politicians seem to excel in. For example, while he was a member of the Health Committee of the Bundestag, he founded a pharmaceutical lobbying agency, and one of his business partners just happened to work for the pharmacy chain Doc Morris. And then there were the peculiar real estate investments. For example, Spahn and his husband bought a house in Berlin with a €4 million loan from a savings bank of which he had previously been a board member. Well, that's not necessarily bad, but there was that time when Spahn bought an apartment from an acquaintance who was later made director of the company that makes smart cards for people on statutory health insurance. And that was just after the health ministry, of which Spahn was the minister, had acquired 51% of that company's shares. Oh, but how could Spahn have possibly afforded all of this? Well, apparently his husband inherited a lot of money after his dad died, except that, as one current affairs magazine discovered when they investigated the issue, that was clearly not true. Funke's father simply didn't have that kind of money. Where it ultimately came from is still something of a mystery. This is all pretty bad for a man who had started out as a young, promising, rising star in politics. But worse was to come. Much, much worse. Something that only came to light a few weeks ago is that Spahn seems to have had connections with a mysterious organisation called Dialogue, founded by billionaire entrepreneur and far-right activist Peter Thiel. Certainly, Spahn has attended quite a lot of their conferences. Should we be concerned? Well, one of Thiel's beliefs is that democracy is incompatible with freedom. And it's very concerning that a German government minister should be associated with that kind of idea. Article 20 of the Basic Law, which is the German constitution, says that Germany is a democratic state. And this is one of only 2 articles protected by an eternity clause. That means that they can never be repealed or amended. Honestly, it should be pretty obvious that the most basic requirement for any government minister is that they comply with constitutional law. But that, as I said, has only very recently come to light after an incriminating document was accidentally leaked. But what has been known for some years is Spahn's behaviour during the pandemic. The fact that he hosted a fundraising dinner during lockdown the day before he tested positive for COVID is not actually the worst thing that he did. In fact, few people probably remember that detail because it was completely overshadowed by the face mask scandal. To be more precise, face mask scandals. Because there's a whole string of things that went very badly wrong, and we could be here all day discussing them. So let me just give you a taste. At the start of the pandemic, the Health Ministry calculated that the country would need about 75 million FFP2 masks and 100 million surgical masks in the next 3 months, and then ordered 5 years' worth of masks at a cost to the taxpayer of 7 billion euros. Now, bear in mind that face masks have a limited shelf life, which can be as little as 2 years. Billions of face masks were never used and had to be destroyed. You could almost forgive that as a stupid blunder, but in the early days of the pandemic, nobody knew what to expect and it was better to be safe than sorry. But there was more. One of Spahn's bright ideas was to invite any company who wanted to supply masks to the government. There was no tendering process. Any government that registered would get a contract, and the government would buy their masks at a set rate. In the end, well over 500 companies got a contract. And would you believe it? Huge numbers of these face masks were found to be defective and couldn't be used. Or shouldn't have been used. Some of them found their way into care homes along with letters explaining that they were for emergency use only. And as it later emerged, the ministry even considered distributing them to homeless and disabled people. Oh, but it wasn't all just incompetence. At one point, the ministry bought over 500,000 masks from a Border Media Group. Does that sound familiar? Yep, that's right. That's the company that Spahn's husband worked for. Also, the job of transporting and storing all of these masks went to a logistics company from Spahn's native region without any kind of tendering process. The company was woefully unprepared for the scale of the job and the entire supply chain collapsed. And so, with all this stuff and more going on, Jens Spahn had become something of a thorn in the side of the CDU. He was really damaging the party's image, and you may be wondering how come he still had a job. Well, so am I. In fact, in May last year, he was made chairman of the CDU-CSU parliamentary group. And let me just briefly explain this one because it is a little bit confusing. The CSU is a political party represented only in Bavaria, and its party chairman is Markus Söder. The CDU is represented in every state except Bavaria, and its party chairman is Friedrich Merz, the current chancellor. In the federal government, these two parties work together in a parliamentary group, which functions like a single party. And it has its own chairman, who, until just a couple of days ago, was Jens Spahn. And now we have to talk about surrogate parenting and the fact that currently it's outlawed in Germany. This is quite a controversial topic, and there are quite a few politicians who argue that this is a very outdated law that seriously needs to be changed. Spahn has in the past spoken out against allowing surrogate parenthood, following the basic party line that it could put women at risk of exploitation. And that is a legitimate concern. The question is whether or not it's possible to regulate it effectively enough to prevent that happening. At the time, Spahn said that as a gay man married to a man, he had to live with the fact that he would never be a father. So, it did more than just raise a few eyebrows when only a few days ago Jens Spahn announced that he and Daniel Funke were proud fathers of baby Georg. The boy's biological father is Funke. The boy's biological mother is a surrogate mother in the US. To be clear, the couple didn't actually do anything illegal. Surrogacy is illegal in Germany, but not in the US, which is where the surrogacy occurred. And there's no ban on bringing your own children into Germany, even if they were conceived using a process which, in Germany, would be illegal. No, the problem is one of hypocrisy. Having raised ethical objections to the whole idea, Spahn went ahead and did it anyway. He may not have violated any laws, but he did go against what he had previously claimed to be his own sense of morality. So, on top of all the other things he had done, this was the last straw. He appeared on a podcast in an attempt to justify his actions, saying that the surrogate mother had been properly vetted, she was financially secure, and she already had children of her own. Nobody was convinced. The bottom line was, he had done something that he had previously said was morally wrong. As one German idiom puts it, he was preaching water and drinking wine. And, well, the upshot of it is that he has finally lost the support of basically everyone in the party. And apparently, Merz himself phoned him to tell him that he really had to resign as chairman of the parliamentary group, which he has now done. He is, though, still a politician, still a member of the Bundestag, and still a member of the CDU. There may be more consequences to come, but for now, he's just thoroughly disgraced. Hey, guys, wait, it's the end of the video. We don't have time for that. Right. We have Merkel, Spahn, Scheuer, Spahn and Spahn, or Spahn, Spahn, Merz, Spahn, Wagen, Spahn and Spahn. Spahn, 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 Spahn.